The marble floors of the Whitmore Medical Center gleamed under the afternoon sun, but Robert Whitmore's face was dark with rage. The billionaire pharmaceutical mogul stood frozen in the doorway of the physical therapy room, his Italian leather shoes planted firmly as he watched the unthinkable unfold before him. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice cut through the soft Latin music like a blade. Carlos Martinez, the 62-year-old janitor, immediately stopped moving. His weathered hands had been gently guiding the arms of 11-year-old Timothy Whitmore, who sat strapped in his custom wheelchair. The boy's face, which moments ago had been lit with the first genuine smile anyone had seen in months, crumbled into confusion. "Sir, I was just—" Carlos began, his deep voice respectful despite the accusation. "You were just overstepping every boundary that exists in this facility." Robert's voice echoed off the walls. "You're a janitor, not a therapist, not a caregiver, and certainly not someone who should be putting their hands on my son." Dr. Sarah Chen, the 34-year-old physical therapist, rushed in from the adjacent room. "Mr. Whitmore, please, if I could explain—" "There's nothing to explain, doctor. This man was dancing with my paralyzed son, dancing as if my boy's condition is some kind of entertainment." Robert's jaw clenched. "This is beyond disrespectful. It's cruel." Carlos slowly stepped back from the wheelchair, his dark eyes never leaving Timothy's face. The boy's lower lip trembled. "Dad, we were just—" "Not now, Timothy." Robert wheeled his son away from Carlos as if the janitor carried a contagious disease. "This man has no medical training, no certification, no right to touch you. What if he'd dropped you? What if he'd made your condition worse?" The janitor's calloused hands hung at his sides. He'd been cleaning these halls for 3 years, always arriving at 4 in the morning, always leaving after sunset. But Robert Whitmore had never really seen him before this moment. To the billionaire, Carlos had been invisible, just another piece of the building's infrastructure, like the elevators or the air conditioning. "Mr. Whitmore," Dr. Chen tried again, her clinical notepad clutched against her white coat. "I've been observing Carlos with Timothy for the past week. The improvement in Timothy's mood and muscle response has been what? Coincidental? Temporary?" Robert's voice dripped with contempt. "My son has been seen by the best neurologists in the country. The Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins. They all say the same thing. The damage to his spinal cord is irreversible. And you're telling me that a janitor, someone who mops floors for a living, has found something they missed?" Carlos straightened his shoulders but kept his voice soft. "Sir, I meant no disrespect. The boy, he asked me about the music I was humming while I cleaned. We started talking about rhythm, about movement. I only wanted to—" "You wanted to what? Give him false hope?" Robert's face reddened. "Do you have any idea what we've been through? What he's been through? 7 months since the accident? 7 months of watching my son's dreams of playing soccer, of running, of being a normal kid, all of it gone. And you waltz in here with your salsa music and your foolish movements, making him believe in miracles that don't exist?" Timothy's small voice broke through. "Dad, please. Carlos makes me feel like I can—" "Like you can what, son? Dance, walk, run?" Robert's voice cracked slightly, revealing the pain beneath his anger. "Those are fantasies, cruel fantasies." He turned back to Carlos. "You're fired. Clear out your locker and leave. If I see you near my son again, I'll have you arrested for assault." But what Robert Whitmore didn't know was that the man he'd just dismissed as just a janitor carried secrets in his weathered hands that would soon shatter everything the billionaire believed about limitations, about hope, and about the power of the human spirit. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful narratives. 3 weeks before that confrontation, Robert Whitmore had stood in the rain at Riverside Cemetery, his hand resting on a black granite headstone. Patricia Whitmore, beloved wife and mother. The accident that had taken his wife had also stolen his son's ability to walk. A drunk driver, a rainy night, a moment that shattered everything. Since then, Robert had poured millions into Timothy's treatment. The best doctors, the most advanced therapies, experimental procedures in Switzerland. Nothing worked. Each failure drove him deeper into a protective shell, convinced that hope was just another word for heartbreak. Meanwhile, Carlos Martinez began each day the same way he had for the past 3 years. He'd arrive at the medical center while the city still slept, his janitor's cart squeaking softly through the empty halls. But Carlos wasn't just mopping floors. He was observing. In the physical therapy wing, he watched children struggle with their limitations. He saw their frustration, their tears, their small victories that went uncelebrated. What his colleagues didn't know was that Carlos spent his evenings differently than they imagined. No one saw him catch the late bus to the community center in the Bronx, where he volunteered 4 nights a week. No one knew about the faded diploma hidden in his locker, not from a cleaning academy, but from the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, where he'd earned his doctorate in neurological rehabilitation 23 years ago. Dr. Sarah Chen had noticed him first. As the youngest physical therapist on staff, she often worked late, reviewing cases that puzzled her. One evening, she'd found Carlos in Timothy's room after visiting hours, not cleaning, but kneeling beside the boy's wheelchair. "What are you doing?" she'd asked, more curious than accusatory. Carlos had looked up with those deep, knowing eyes. "Listen," he'd said simply, and she had. Timothy was humming, actually humming, along to a melody Carlos was creating with gentle taps on the wheelchair's armrest. The boy's feet, supposedly paralyzed from the waist down, were twitching. Not much, barely visible, but moving. "How?" Sarah had whispered. "The body remembers rhythm before it remembers movement," Carlos had replied. "In Madrid, we called it ritmo de vida, the rhythm of life. The nervous system, it responds to patterns, to music, in ways we're only beginning to understand." Sarah had started documenting these sessions secretly. Each day after official therapy ended, Carlos would spend 20 minutes with Timothy. They'd start with simple rhythms, then gradually incorporate upper body movements. By the second week, Timothy's muscle tension had improved by 30%. His reflexes showed activity where before there had been nothing. "Why don't you tell them?" Sarah had asked Carlos one day. "Tell them who you really are?" Carlos had smiled sadly. "Dr. Chen, I've been in this country for 15 years. My credentials, they mean nothing here. My accent, my skin color, my current job, people see what they expect to see. But the children, they don't care about diplomas. They just want to feel alive again." The morning of the confrontation, Sarah had made a decision. She'd compiled all her observations into a report for Robert Whitmore. The data was undeniable. Timothy was showing neurological improvement that defied his diagnosis. She'd planned to present it that afternoon to reveal Carlos's true identity and propose a revolutionary treatment plan. But Robert had arrived early, unexpected and unannounced, and what he'd seen, his paralyzed son moving to music with a janitor, had triggered every fear, every protective instinct, every prejudice he didn't even know he carried. As Carlos packed his meager belongings from his locker that day, Sarah found him in the break room. "This is wrong," she said. "I have the data. I can prove what you've been doing works." Carlos folded his uniform carefully. "Sometimes, Doctor, people need to discover truth in their own time. Timothy, he felt something today. That feeling, it won't go away." "But what if Mr. Whitmore never lets you come back?" Carlos picked up a worn photograph from his locker, a picture of a dance studio in Madrid, filled with children in wheelchairs, all of them dancing. "Then someone else will continue the work. The rhythm, once awakened, it never truly sleeps." But what would happen when Timothy's condition started deteriorating without Carlos's sessions? What would Robert Whitmore do when conventional medicine failed once again? 2 weeks passed, like a funeral procession. Timothy had stopped eating. The boy who'd shown spark and life during his sessions with Carlos now lay listless in his hospital bed, his eyes fixed on nothing. The muscle improvements Sarah had documented were reversing. Worse, new complications were arising. Respiratory issues, circulation problems, the beginning stages of severe depression. Robert Whitmore sat in the hospital corridor at 3 a.m, his head in his hands. He'd flown in another specialist from Germany, tried another experimental treatment. Nothing. His son was slipping away, not just physically, but spiritually. "Mr. Whitmore?" Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "We need to talk." "Not now, Doctor. Unless you have a miracle in that folder, I don't want to hear it." Sarah sat down beside him anyway. "Actually, I do. Or at least, I did." She opened her tablet, showing him weeks of data. "These readings are from Timothy's sessions before you fired Carlos. Look at the muscle response, the neural activity, the improvement in his lower extremity circulation." Robert's eyes widened as he processed the numbers. "This is impossible. The damage to his spine is still there." But Carlos wasn't trying to fix the spine directly. He was creating new neural pathways through rhythm and movement therapy. It's a technique that's been showing remarkable results in specialized clinics in Europe. Then why didn't he say something? Why pretend to be? He wasn't pretending to be anything. Carlos Martinez is a janitor here. He's also doctor. Carlos Martinez Rivera, former director of the Madrid Center for Dance Movement Therapy. He pioneered techniques that have helped hundreds of children with spinal injuries. He came to America 15 years ago to care for his dying mother. After she passed, his credentials weren't recognized here. He needed work, so he took what he could get. The blood drained from Robert's face. "I called him. I said he was just a janitor." "Yes, and you fired him for doing what he spent his entire life perfecting." Sarah's voice carried no judgment, just facts. "Mr. Whitmore, your son is deteriorating without those sessions. His body had started to remember how to fight, how to adapt. Now, it's forgetting again." Robert stood abruptly. "Where is he? Where is Carlos?" "I don't know. He hasn't answered my calls. But, Mr. Whitmore, even if we find him, why would he come back? You threatened to have him arrested." The billionaire's phone buzzed. It was his assistant. "Sir, Timothy is asking for you. He says it's urgent." Robert ran to his son's room. Timothy was struggling to sit up, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I need Carlos. Please, When he was here, when we danced, I could feel something, not just in my body, but in my hope. It's gone now. Everything feels gone. Son, you always say you'd do anything for me, that you'd pay any price, go anywhere, try anything, but you won't let the one person who made me believe again even try to help. Why, Dad? Because he's a janitor? Because he's not white? Because he doesn't have an American accent? The words hit Robert like physical blows. His 11-year-old son had seen what he'd been blind to. That night, Robert did something he hadn't done in years. He took the subway to the Bronx. Sarah had given him one lead, the community center where Carlos volunteered. The building was old, paint peeling, but the sound coming from inside was alive with joy. Robert peered through the window and stopped breathing. The recreation room was full of children, some in wheelchairs, some with walkers, some with prosthetic limbs. And in the center, Carlos moved with a grace that defied his age, leading them all in a dance that wasn't about perfect steps, but about perfect joy. Children who shouldn't have been able to move were swaying, reaching, laughing. A young mother standing beside Robert noticed his stare. "That's Mr. Carlos," she said with reverence. "He's been coming here for 3 years. No charge. My daughter was told she'd never walk again after her accident. Look at her now." She pointed to a girl, maybe 8, taking tentative but real steps while holding Carlos's hands. "How?" Robert whispered. "He says the body has memory deeper than injury. That rhythm and joy can wake up parts of us that trauma puts to sleep. I don't understand the science. I just know it works." Robert watched Carlos lift a boy from his wheelchair, supporting his weight entirely, and dance with him as if the child were weightless. The boy's face radiated pure happiness. "He never mentions his past," the mother continued, "but Maria, who runs the center, she looked him up once. Do you know he created an entire rehabilitation institute in Spain? Published papers that changed how Europe treats spinal injuries? And here he is, mopping floors by day and healing kids by night." The moment was shattered when Carlos spotted Robert through the window. Their eyes met, the billionaires filled with shame, the janitors with quiet dignity. Carlos gently set down the child he was holding and walked outside. "Mr. Whitmore," he said simply, I came to apologize and to beg. Timothy needs you. I see that now. I see everything now." Carlos studied him for a long moment. "Your son doesn't need me, Mr. Whitmore. He needs to believe that his body still holds possibilities. I'm just someone who knows how to help him remember. Please, come back. I'll pay whatever you want. I'll build you a whole wing at the hospital. I don't want your money." Carlos's voice was firm but kind. "If I come back, it's for Timothy, but there are conditions." What Carlos would demand would change not just Timothy's treatment, but the entire way Robert Whitmore saw the world. If this transformation moves you, share your thoughts in the comments below. The next morning, Carlos walked back into Whitmore Medical Center, but not through the service entrance. Robert had insisted he enter through the main lobby, where the billionaire stood waiting with Dr. Chen and the entire board of directors. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert's voice carried across the marble atrium, "I want to introduce you to Dr. Carlos Martinez Rivera, who will be leading a new experimental therapy program at our facility." Carlos raised his hand. "No." The board members exchanged confused glances. Robert's face paled. "No. I will help Timothy and any other child who needs it, but not as a doctor with a fancy title and a big office. I'll continue as Carlos the janitor, who also happens to dance with children. The moment we make this about credentials and hierarchy, we lose what makes it work, the simple human connection. Robert started to protest, but Carlos continued. Your son connected with Carlos the janitor, not some intimidating specialist. That relationship, that trust, that's where healing begins. However, I do have conditions. First, we create a program where every child in this hospital, regardless of their family's ability to pay, has access to movement therapy. Second, we train other janitors, cafeteria workers, and maintenance staff who might have hidden talents that could help these children. Third, you, Mr. Whitmore, participate in every session with your son. Me? But I don't know how to... Exactly. You'll learn to be vulnerable, to be imperfect, to dance badly but with love. Your son needs to see you as a father, not as the man trying to buy his way to a cure. Robert swallowed hard and nodded. The first session was scheduled for that afternoon. The therapy room had been cleared, soft Latin music played, and Timothy sat in his wheelchair, his eyes bright with anticipation. Robert stood awkwardly in his $1,000 suit, looking utterly out of place. Take off your jacket, Carlos instructed, and your tie and those shoes. But, Timothy, Carlos said gently, tell your father why we dance barefoot. The boy smiled, the first real smile in weeks. Because the earth remembers our steps, even when our legs forget how to make them. For the next hour, Robert Whitmore, billionaire pharmaceutical mogul, learned to move with his son. Carlos guided them both, teaching the father to support his son's weight, showing him how to feel the rhythm not with his mind, but with his heart. Timothy laughed when Robert stumbled, and for the first time since the accident, they were just father and son, not patient and guardian. Then it happened. As Carlos led them through a particularly fluid movement, with Robert holding Timothy under his arms and swaying to the music, Timothy's right foot pressed against the floor, not a spasm, not a reflex, but an intentional push. I feel it, Timothy whispered. Dad, I can feel the floor. Robert froze, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever spell was occurring. Don't stop, Carlos said softly. The miracle isn't in the moment, it's in the continuation. Keep dancing. They did, and Timothy's left foot joined the right, not bearing weight yet, but seeking contact, remembering its purpose. Dr. Chen, watching from the doorway, was documenting everything, tears streaming down her face. She'd seen the science, understood the neuroplasticity involved, knew about the rhythm-based neural pathway reconstruction. But watching it happen, watching a father and son dance their way back to hope, that was beyond any medical journal's ability to capture. Over the following weeks, the transformation was remarkable, not just in Timothy, who progressed from feeling sensation to bearing partial weight to taking his first assisted steps, but in the entire hospital. Carlos had been right. Once they started looking, they found hidden talents everywhere. The night custodian, who'd been a trauma counselor in Honduras. The cafeteria worker who'd taught sign language in Haiti. The parking attendant who'd been a music therapist in Nigeria. Robert funded it all, but more importantly, he participated in it all. He learned that healing wasn't something you could purchase. It was something you had to dance your way through, one rhythm at a time. 6 months later, at the Whitmore Medical Center's annual gala, Timothy Whitmore walked onto the stage. His gait was uneven, supported by canes, but he was walking. The audience, filled with New York's medical elite, erupted in applause. But Timothy raised one cane for silence. "I want to introduce you to the man who taught me to dance when my legs couldn't move, who showed my father how to hold me up without holding me back, and who proved that sometimes the most powerful medicine doesn't come with a degree. It comes with rhythm, patience, and the simple belief that everybody holds a dancer inside." Carlos walked onto the stage in his janitor's uniform, and the room fell silent. Then Timothy dropped his canes, and for 30 seconds that felt like eternity. He danced. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but powerfully. His father joined him, then Dr. Chin, then one by one, children from the movement therapy program filled the stage, all dancing in their own ways, some in wheelchairs, some with walkers, all with joy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert Whitmore said, his voice thick with emotion, "6 months ago, I nearly destroyed a miracle because I couldn't see past my prejudices. I saw a janitor where I should have seen a healer. I saw limitations where I should have seen possibilities. Carlos Martinez Rivera has taught me that the most profound transformations don't happen in boardrooms or operating theaters. They happen when we're brave enough to dance with our broken parts until they remember how to move again. The program Carlos insisted on creating has now treated over 200 children, all free of charge. The Hidden Talents Initiative has discovered 12 other employees with specialized skills that are now being utilized. And Carlos? He still mops the floors every morning at 4 a.m., but now everyone knows that the janitor who cleans their halls also cleans away the impossibilities that trap children in bodies that have forgotten how to dance. Timothy Whitmore now plays adaptive soccer. He'll never move the way he did before the accident, but he moves with something more powerful. The knowledge that miracles aren't about returning to who we were, but about dancing our way to who we can become. And in the medical center's new wing, officially called the Movement Therapy Center, but known to everyone as Carlos's Dance Floor, a simple plaque hangs by the door. The body remembers rhythm before it remembers movement. CMR, Janitor and Teacher of Impossible Dances. Robert Whitmore passes that plaque every day, and every day he remembers the lesson it took a humble janitor to teach a billionaire. That the greatest wealth isn't in what we possess, but in our ability to see the extraordinary in those we once dismissed as ordinary. If you believe in the power of second chances and hidden miracles, subscribe to hear more stories that challenge what we think we know about human potential.